Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to this episode of Couchonomics with Arjun, which is in collaboration with the Qatar Development Bank, also known as QDB. I'm beaming in from Scale 7, which is in Doha in Qatar. And joining me is someone from QDB. His name is Mohammed Al-Emadi. He is the Executive Director of Incubation and Venture Capital Investment. So let me welcome him to the couch. Mohammed, welcome.
Thank you, Arjun. Welcome to Qatar, and thanks for having me.
Thanks a lot. So I was actually reading some interesting facts and figures about what QDB has been doing, and what came to me was that you've deployed about $100 million across the ecosystem, both directly and indirectly. I guess the question was less about the size of the investment, but more in terms of what was the thesis behind the investment, what's the thinking, what's the playbook for QDB on this?
Yeah, sure. Let me start by giving you an introduction about Qatar Development Bank. So, Qatar Development Bank is a development financial institution. We're responsible, alongside our local partners, to develop the private sector in Qatar through different financing and non-financing offerings. Obviously, our offerings go beyond the investments in startups and technology sectors. We also invest and finance companies within, or SMEs specifically within the industrial sector and other services sectors. Now, in terms of our support, and if you look at the suite of supports that QDB offers, we try to position ourselves as a supporting entity that supports the businesses from the idea to the shelves on the international market. This is very important. And in terms of the SMEs within manufacturing, industrial sectors, that will be the actual products that we support them with, whether from establishing the business itself till growing it in the global markets through different offering, be it the financing, the project financing, the working capital, the export financing products, the insurance provided to support our exporters, taking those ideas to international markets and shelves. If you look at the technology companies specifically, and since this is today our core topic in this conversation, we also support our companies all the way from the establishment until we take them to international markets and support selling their products and services globally. And I talk here about the digital products and services. The journey starts specifically for technology companies from the pre-acceleration and the incubation space, all the way to the acceleration, followed by the venture capital funding that we provide through QDB. Today, QDB, as you rightly mentioned, deployed somewhere around $100 million directly and indirectly in companies and funds. Our portfolio today exceeded 60 companies in technology sector. We invested in companies from Qatar and companies all the way from Singapore to the United States. And when we invest internationally, our core mandate and our core focus is how can we bring in value out of those investments to Qatar. So this is in a nutshell our mandate. Now, when I talk about the value that we bring in to Qatar in terms of those investments, we focus on multiple elements. The impact that those companies will bring in terms of talent attraction from a new know-how that they would bring into the market, and also in terms of the innovation that their products will bring to elevate the innovation in larger companies, or even some of the government or semi-government agencies that operate in Qatar. The reason is that innovation is one of our core pillars when it comes to ways of doing things in our daily routine and work.
All right. No, this is excellent. You've given me a few points to actually dip into. But before I do that, I think you mentioned the word ecosystem, right? And I guess my question to you was, talk us a little bit about the ecosystem architecture that exists. So we have obviously, and I'll lean a bit more on the financial services sector, right? So we have obviously QDB, we have the regulator, right? The Central Bank of Qatar, or the Qatar Central Bank. We have QIA, you have QFC. How do all of them come together? How does the magic happen?
Yeah, look, the beauty about the Qatari ecosystem that it's a very well integrated ecosystem. And I've highlighted at the beginning of my conversation everything we do and the support that extended by QDB is in partnership with different ecosystem players. And the orchestration works very well between those players and different players across the ecosystem, some that were not highlighted in your question. And if we zoom in specifically on the financial services and the fintech ecosystem, QDB today, within its mandate, it operates the Qatar Fintech Hub, which we have had a conversation around it briefly before we start the recording. The Qatar Fintech Hub is mandated in collaboration with different players and under the leadership also of the central bank to develop and uplift the fintech ecosystem in Qatar. We take the fintech ecosystem specifically very seriously in Qatar. There was also a rollout a few years ago of the national fintech strategy, which laid the foundation of our objective that we want to achieve as a nation in that space by 2030. In addition to this, if you look at the third financial sector strategy, there is a good stress and a good emphasis on the importance of the digital innovation and the fintech play within the financial services in general. I think blending all these together with the efforts that we see from the regulator as a sector developer, I think this brings, first of all, a commitment to developing that sector. And we at Qatar Fintech Hub, we support through different offering and multiple offerings. First of all, the capacity and capability building through different programs that we offer under the Qatar Fintech Hub, be it the pre-acceleration or the acceleration program, which is also blended with an investment scheme to support the sector. Since we established back in 2021, we have graduated more than 80 companies from that hub, locally, whether they are local companies or international. We have also invested more than $11 million through the hub itself on those startups and companies, many of which today relocated part of their businesses or expanded part of their businesses to Qatar, and they're enjoying Qatar as their launchpad to the region. In addition to this, we work very closely with the regulator just to distinguish the role between different players, and also for me to demonstrate the strong partnership that we have with different players in the ecosystem. So we work very closely with the regulator, Qatar Central Bank, in terms of preparing the companies for their licensing or sandbox entry journey, in terms of equipping them with the right capabilities, supporting them get better equipped to be ready for the sandbox. And in addition to this, and if you look at the regulatory infrastructure, and I want to shed light on that, I think we have done a lot at that space. Qatar Central Bank launched the regulatory sandbox. It also followed up by also creating the Express Sandbox, which was launched a few months ago. And in addition to this, having that sandbox ready to receive applications, we've also developed all the necessary regulations for the subsectors that we're targeting in the first phase of the execution of our national fintech strategy. We have more than 10 regulatory frameworks that are on the market today that are acting as a good reference for the fintech companies to get regulated and to guide or navigate their way through the regulatory process. The role of the Qatar Financial Center, which is also one of our important partners on the fintech ecosystem, is being the the registration platform, and it's one of the unique registration platforms regionally. Qatar Financial Center operate on a UK common law regulatory framework, which is very compatible for our international partners and international companies that we keep attracting from the Qatar Fintech Hub. And we have a strong collaboration with the Qatar Financial Center in terms of easing the registration process of those companies, ensuring that they get their navigator through as they soft land in Qatar. In addition to this, we work also very closely with the Qatar Financial Center on one of the technical sandboxes that was founded a few years ago, which is the Digital Asset Lab operated by the Qatar Financial Center. In terms of QIA, it's a very important player that you've highlighted. And if we speak about QIA, I need to highlight also the recent initiative announced by His Excellency the Prime Minister of launching the fund programs, a $1 billion that's dedicated to attract asset managers and funds to Qatar to invest on the venture capital space. So far, there are a number of funds that were already established in Qatar and already received their investments from QIA, and they're very active in the ecosystem. I'm also going to shed the light on what they have done so far in that space and how we collaborate with them at the QDB level. So all in all, I think we have, and I want to highlight again that we have a very strong ecosystem that collaborate very closely. And this is very important, by the way, in terms of the messaging to the market, because I think the feedback that we keep receiving from our international partners, that they tap into the local ecosystem, that they find the customer journey is very smooth when they try to approach us as the ecosystem player, whether us or our partners, because we have a very well integrated ecosystem in Qatar.
No, there's no doubt about it, and I think this was excellently put, because I think you've architected the four players, but as you said, there's a lot more, right? I think Doha is a highly livable city, right? I've been frequenting for the last 15 years. I have seen the transition in the city, and obviously all the wonderful stuff that happened around the World Cup and post World Cup. You from an education perspective, I think the investment, the commitment which has gone into building, primary education, secondary education, university level education actually becomes quite a center for both retaining and attracting talent, which I think is essential. And actually, earlier today, I was talking to Hamid, who's the CEO of Sununu, and I think one of the key points he made was, he said, we're starting to see a lot more talent that is available, right, and is actually attracted to come to Qatar and Doha and work here, which, to be honest with you, is, to me, one of the most important ingredients for building a sustainable ecosystem, whether it's fintech or otherwise. So I think it's incredibly wonderful. We talked briefly before we sat down around venture studios, right? Which personally to me was quite an interesting concept, because it seems, you've got the fund of funds, which is, which we've seen globally succeed. You've obviously got the fintech hub running. You've got the sandbox. So what is the thinking behind creating a venture studio, which is run and operated by QDB in partnership with QIA, if I'm not wrong?
Yeah, let me just maybe shed the light on the venture studio, but also let me take you a step back of what was the thought process behind establishing the venture studio in Qatar. So if you look at our National Development Strategy 2024-2030, which is the strategy that we're all working on in Qatar to achieve its objectives, we have laid down the foundation for multiple objectives around the venture capital scene in Qatar, mainly around the size of the venture capital industry that we wish to see by 2030 in terms of the percentage of that market to our GDP. The second is the number of deals and the total volume of capital invested in the venture capital space. So to start with, having these KPIs in our core strategy as a nation demonstrate the commitment toward this sector. And this is very important to start with. And the government have taken all the necessary steps and laid down all the necessary foundations to achieving such, capitalizing on the existing strong educational infrastructure, as you just highlighted. And I think if you look at Qatar today, we have a world-class educational infrastructure, whether it's the actual infrastructure demonstrated on different universities, the education city, and the others, or in terms of the names of the educational institutions that operate in Qatar, the local ones, as well as the one that have their extension in terms of branches in Qatar. So it's very important to capitalize on this whenever we want to talk about innovation, which is directly, in my view, correlated with the venture capital industry in Qatar. Now, within the National Development Strategy, also we have the enablement of the private sector, and attracting FDI is within the core of that strategy. And in our view, when we thought about the establishing the venture studio, we were thinking of how can we attract the international players, the private sector, to tap into the space of the venture studio, the acceleration, and the venture capital scene in general. And we also wanted to capitalize on the existing effort done by the Fund of Fund program of a QIA. So we have announced in Web Summit this year our partnership with Utopia Capital Management to establish the first venture studio in Qatar, and it's going to be a regional venture studio that will serve the entire region from Qatar. It's called Atypical Venture, and we have collaborated with Utopia Capital Management on that. Utopia Capital Management was one of the first funds received investments from a QIA as part of the Fund of Fund program, and we've established the venture studio in Qatar, and we have linked the objectives of that venture studio with the funds that Utopia is operating globally. The venture studio in Qatar will be targeting establishing new ventures from Qatar, generating pipeline from universities and from different institutions to grow and build businesses from Qatar. That would be the first track. The second track will be attracting international ideas from different hubs that Utopia Capital Management is connected to, or even that QDB is connected to as an investor and as a bank, to help them grow from that venture studio from Qatar to the region. In addition to that, that venture studio is complemented with the existing fund that Utopia Capital Management operate, but also complemented with a co-investment vehicle that QDB made available for the outcome of that venture studio. And that is part of our efforts to enable and unlock the private sector capital to tap into that segment. And as I highlighted at the beginning, unlocking the private sector capital and increasing the participation of the private sector in the venture capital scene is one of our key objectives as a nation and part of our KPI by 2030 as a country. And it's all cascaded down into the institutions that are supporting that objective. In addition to that, I want to highlight also an important initiative by QDB in partnership with different players, the Investment Promotion Agency and other partners on the ecosystem, which is the Startup Qatar Investment Program. I'm sure that you've heard about this initiative, which became actually now a global initiative. Startup Qatar Investment Program is an investment program to attract international companies to soft land in Qatar. Since the inception of that program and till the day that we're recording this podcast, we've invested and approved investments of more than in more than 35 companies from different continents around the world and from Qatar. But that program does not only bring capital to the scene. It brings capital. It brings a full-fledged soft landing support, and more importantly, it brings market access to the recipient and the beneficiaries of that program. So the way we look at it is that we invest in international companies, we help them soft land in Qatar, but whenever we have that conversation, it's always a conversation of relevance. We target companies that have a purpose and reason to be in the region, and we support them to take Qatar as the regional hub for them to grow. Obviously, the program is complemented with different offering, be it first of all the capital, which we do it through our venture capital arm. We also provide access for the beneficiaries of that program in the talent community program, and the talent community program is one of the unique programs regionally where we provide residency units for the recipients of the investments through the Startup Qatar Investment Program, but also for those companies who benefited from other programs by QDB or its partners, mainly for those startups who wish to attract their teams that working remotely to come and live and operate from Qatar. That program also complements the beneficiaries of the office spaces and access to the market, and we work very closely with our partners, Qatar Research Development and Innovation Council, and conducting business matchmaking sessions for those companies who we attract through that program. And coincidentally, actually, yesterday we concluded one session. So we have a gathering that became now an annual ritual for QDB, which called Welcome to Qatar, where we invite our portfolio companies that benefited from the Startup Qatar investment program that became part of our investment portfolio to spend 2 days in Qatar. First of all, to get to know the country and different institutions that they need to tap into once they are in Qatar. And the next day we do the market access session with the QRDI, the Qatar Research, Development and Innovation Council, to ensure that those companies get access to business opportunity. So this is the ecosystem that we've built over the last few years when it comes to the venture capital scene, and it's working actually very well, and we've seen great attraction from different players in the ecosystem, whether it's from the local market or the regional market.
No, excellent. You know, it was brilliant because you've answered the next two questions that I wanted to have. Right. So I'm cognizant of time. I don't want to keep you here for too long. I've got two questions. One, I'll basically because we talked about attracting a lot of new ideas, startups into Qatar. I think the soft landing and the ecosystem support that you're talking is I guess next to none in terms of the wow factor that it offers. If I just double click on fintech for a second, right? You've obviously seen the fintech evolution over the last 5 to 10 years, right? Are there specific sectors where we are more focused now in Qatar in terms of developing fintech, or we're basically saying no, let the market dictate that naturally, right? Typically, what I've seen is if the latter strategy is approached, we get lots and lots of players in payments, and then some of the other important sectors don't develop. But I just wanted to hear what's the ideology for QDB on this.
Yeah, look, obviously, for the fintech, as a new sector, when we first established it, payment was the first sector to tap into it, and in my view, and again, that's the personal view of how I see the sector. I think payment will become only an enabler and a tool for the wider fintech sector in a few years as we develop the other subsectors and become kind of the service that many of those fintechs would need, rather than being a fintech on itself. And let's see what the market will decide in a few years. Now, in terms of the sector focus, obviously we rely on different teams. Every year we launch our programs. So if you take this year's program, we focused on multiple teams. Some examples, crowdfunding, insurance, and emerging technologies were among the top themes that we focused on. But I think the approach that we're taking is the latter, as you've highlighted. We want to let the market decide on the need of the subsectors that we're targeting, so we don't neglect any technology. And the other reason is that we don't want to limit innovation in the financial services space. Therefore, we're being quite accommodative in terms of sectors that we support. Obviously, payment is the largest. We've seen also great attraction by the BNPL as a technology, buy now and pay later. We have seen also, and we started to see a number of companies get regulated by the regulator at that space, and other sectors are following. So in our view, we want to focus on the sector in general, and then we want to see where the market is moving and start to narrow our focus on subsectors where we see gaps and opportunities there.
Okay, very good point. Fintech is everybody's sort of top of the list talk conversation globally, right? It's not just in the region that we're in, but globally, fintech tends to be more and more talked about. And I think there's good reason, because I think eventually what's very critical people understand is with technology, financial services is embedding itself in every sector, right? So whether we're talking about trade, whether we're talking about cross-border or domestic trade, whether we're talking about insurance, whether we're talking about growth and so on and so forth. So my question to you is, how do you envision Qatar's role, right, beyond Qatar in fintech and financial services over the next sort of 4 to 5 years?
Well, look, if you look at our third financial sector strategy, as I've highlighted, fintech is, or innovation in general, is in the core of it. And also we've established the national fintech strategy, demonstrating, our ambition on that sector. I think in terms of the region, we're also blessed to be in a region that has offering that complements our offering in terms of the focus on the fintech space. I think the focus moving forward in the next few years will be on the Islamic finance and Islamic fintech. I think this is an area that has a lot of opportunities, and also it has gaps that need to be filled in the market regionally. I think this is a space that we want to focus on moving forward. Insurance technology
Again,
is also another sector.
and it's ignored, by the way. I'll say this officially. It is ignored by the region.
Yeah, and it's among actually our main focus when it comes to the long-term growth. So insurance technology is one of the sectors that we want to focus on. And to be very honest, I think insurance in general is an underserved sector generally. But I'm not going to go into this since our conversations around the fintech specifically. So the technology within the insurance sector, I think, is an area that it's worth having an attention around it. And I think it has massive opportunities moving forward. I would summarize the long-term growth within those two sectors without neglecting the rest, as I highlighted at the beginning. The fintech sector on the region generally is an emerging one. I wouldn't say it reached its maturity or its full potential. So as long as we are on that space, we need to have an open-minded when we target sectors and be open for a new innovation within different subsectors at the fintech space. Luckily, MENA region in 2024 was one of the fastest growing regions when it comes to fintech in general, in terms of investments, in terms of number of companies. And I think this also indirectly resulted into more adoption of fintech. And this is the final outcome that we want to achieve. The financial services sector, obviously, is a very competitive one. I think there is a huge competition as well on that sector. So I think ecosystems need to be aware of that and need to move very fast in terms of developing and adopting new technologies.
And you're so correct that we're at the start of this, because I'll just leave two thoughts which I know we've spoken previously. One is, I think the greatest catalyst, or hopefully the next step level increase in fintech, will be the greater adoption by the banks itself, right? I think they've started collaborating, but it's early days, right? I think that's one big catalyst. The other thing is, I'm very impressed by the progressive stance the QFC has taken in terms of the digital assets scene, right? Which itself, the convergence of traditional finance and decentralized finance will open up a whole new world of fintech innovation. And I think the work they're doing, at least because I sit on a number of their sort of groups, is actually quite imaginative. My last question. I know I've kept you too long, right? Please paint a picture 5 years from now. What would make you proud?
Well, obviously, since we are in the middle of that ecosystem, and I'm a firm believer, that the venture capital ecosystem, the investment ecosystem, the innovation and the fintech specifically ecosystems are essential on our economic diversification objectives. So in my view, I want to, throughout the journey in the next 5 years, I think we need to keep laser focused on our objectives in terms of the KPIs that we want to achieve by 2030. And if you ask me about the picture, I think really achieving and exceeding the targets that we have had defined in our strategies. And obviously, in terms of the final outlook, and if I imagine the final outlook by 2030, we would want to have a mature ecosystem when it comes to venture capital. I want to see more private sector participation.
Thank you for that. If I ask you to paint a picture 5 years from now, what would make you proud?
Well, obviously, Arjun, everything we discussed in this conversation, I think is important for our economic diversification. That's the main objective, of everything we do. And whatever we do on the venture capital space, on the fintech space, is just part of the puzzle of of our final outlook in terms of economic diversification by 2030. Now, what I want to see by 2030, obviously, is more participation of the private sector and the presence of different asset managers and funds on the VC space that are contributing and investing in local ventures, but also attracting international startups to Qatar, marking Qatar as a launchpad for regional and global startups indeed by 2030. In addition to that, obviously, in terms of the market size, we started to see, starting from last year, we started to see a growth in terms of the market size, whether it's the venture capital investments, the number of startups, the contribution of the startups in different sectors in the overall economy is increasing, starting from last year or even from 2023. And we want to see that growth continue and accelerated as we progress towards 2030. And finally, I think in terms of the fintech ecosystem, we want to see, I would say, a market that's disrupted in a positive way. I want to make sure that I highlight this very clearly. And the disruption in a positive way is introducing new ways of doing things at the financial services space. We started to see a very positive early signs, I would say. And we want to see this continue and compounded as we progress to 2030.
So Mohammed, you've done a great job. The vision exists, right? And you're working towards it. I think the architecture is coming together with a number of sort of building blocks, and they're all very powerful organizations. And that's great to hear is that there's collaboration. We're getting to see success, which is actually highly encouraging because that builds the motivation, right? But my question to you is, the startup ecosystem is developing, right? And it's developing not just in Qatar, but across the GCC, right? What structural topics, right, will actually be the game changer for you guys? Will it be the ability to attract and retain talent? Will it be the ability to deploy capital in a very concise, smart, and a focused manner? Will it be able to give people the exit opportunities? Or will it be able to, for you to be able to catalyze the collaboration, as you just mentioned, between the private and the existing ecosystem and the new kids on the block, right? Maybe it's all of that. How do you envision it?
Yeah, this is a very good question, Arjun. And I think it's a mix of all these elements together. But let me also highlight and emphasize, because they vary in terms of weight when you look at the overall mix of what makes the ecosystem succeed. I would start with the talent. I think talent is a very important topic when it comes to growing the innovation, the venture capital, and the startup scene in any region. And over the last few years, we've seen a great competition on talent attraction, to be very honest with you. And there is a scarcity of the talents regionally. And I think in Qatar, we're very equipped, to support building the local talents that can serve that sector. And that's mainly driven from the strong infrastructure that was built by the nation over the last 2 decades, specifically, or actually 3 decades by now, and specifically around the educational infrastructure and the R&D infrastructure that was built in Qatar. And if you complement this with the right offering that was created in the last 5 years in terms of funding, and the funding, I'll split it into two: the capital investments and the R&D funding support, that brings a great composition of talent attraction and supporting the existing ventures through different funding tools. The R&D to support talent attraction and rotation is available today. The R&D funding to support piloting and testing is also available, and the capital is widely available, and it's now more focused into the priority sectors that the country targets to grow in. I think the other element that's very important is the market. And for Qatar as a nation, as I highlighted, I think for a small nation, we have a huge advantage of the very well integrated ecosystem that brings all the players together. But also, Qatar is a very unique ecosystem in terms of providing opportunities for piloting and testing. And as I highlighted also in my previous answer, is that the piloting and testing is also complemented with the right funding, incentivizing the large corporation, but also the product providers, that the startups, to pilot and test their products. And I think in a very in any innovation ecosystem, you need continuous testing and piloting for a product to ensure its viability. And I'm also a firm believer that innovation can only grow with a sustainable commercial model that help it to scale. If you have an innovation that's not adaptable or that cannot be piloted anywhere, then you cannot scale it and you cannot take it to different markets. So this is very important. And when I talk about the market, it's not necessarily the size of the market, but how the market react to your product. And I think this is something available in the market. Finally, I think exits are very important. And we started to build the exit ecosystem as we started to attract the funds from different continents through the fund of fund programs, or also through other initiatives that the country created within that space. We have witnessed the first exit this year. I would call the billion real exit of one of our portfolio company in the QDB, but also a local company that was acquired by a regional player. And I think having these stories on the ecosystem demonstrate the readiness of the ecosystem, but also it's a testament that Qatar is an attractive destination for investors regionally and globally.
Well, I can only thank you for the very candid and open conversation we've had today. For someone who's been in and out, even I've learned a few things today. So thank you for that. And I'm sure all the listeners that we have, not just in Qatar, not just in the region, but beyond, and hopefully the show allows this conversation go that beyond, will definitely benefit from it. So with that, I'd like to thank you for taking out time this afternoon.
Thank you, Arjun. And it's a pleasure to have you in Doha.
No, my pleasure entirely. So, ladies and gentlemen, that was Mohammed Al-Emadi. He is the Executive Director of Incubation and Venture Capital Investment with the QDB. I think my simple message is that Qatar is making itself heard loud and clear. They have proven that the strategy works. And I think we should watch over the next few years how they will accelerate through their journeys. I've gotten to know Mohammed very recently. We've had a few interesting conversations, but all I can say is that the candid nature of expression is testament of the, I guess, confidence they have in what they're trying to do. So with that, I'll say goodbye and thank you.